just a couple bad weather fans representing New York, talking all things sports. Man, what could go wrong? We got Alex, who's a fan of the Knicks, and Mike of the Nets. The yin-yang of the tri-state, place your bets on the Yankees, Giants, Mets, or Jets. Yeah, you should listen if it's sparking your interest. If you made a vow to your team, don't break it. Bad weather fans is the relation.
That's right. This is Bad Weather Fans, episode number 228. Mike Seglia, Alex Benesowitz, and no Alex today. So we're joined by a great Nets podcaster, a great Nets fan, and that's Doug Norrie, who's the co-host of Locked On Nets. Doug, I'm excited to have you on. Even more excited than me to have you on this show. It's probably my dad, who sends me your clips all the time. And he's like, you got to have Doug on the show. He sends me your clips. I'm not kidding. Like a couple times a week. So he consumes your podcast as well as I do. So appreciate you stopping by and joining Bad Weather Fans.
Oh, just like we joke on the show. I joke with Adam all the time. You have to beat the fans away when you're in the Nets podcasting game. It's very, very high profile. So can't be surprised when, especially an older demographic, just wants to yuck it up as much as possible. No, I really appreciate it. All jokes aside, that probably is one of the better introductions I've ever gotten. So as long as we can just talk Nets and just have fun with it, like that's the only goal. So yeah, excited, really pumped to be here. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Thank you, Doug, for coming on. Your Twitter at Doug Norrie. I like to be sarcastic, but I'm like, wow, I have a lot to learn. Your Twitter game, I'll give it an A+. It's because you do a good job not taking yourself too seriously, which I think is really smart, and understanding that this is all real bullshit in a lot of ways on Twitter. Yeah. And I know Alex too, who's, a Knicks troll. I'll say it. Even he's like, your Twitter game is outstanding.
Yeah, it's it's like funny. Like early on, we kind of learned. You get older too. I'm like not a young guy here at this point. It's like you can't. There's only a few things in my life I take really, really seriously. Basketball is not one of them. I take like analysis seriously in that I want to get things sort of like correct, right? Like X's and O's, and like understand basketball more. But when it comes to talking about sports, there's just like a legion of people out there that, in my mind at least, take it way too seriously.
Yeah.
So whenever you can catch those people out in the wild, which is what can happen on Twitter, which is what, I would say like 90% of the people probably understand that I'm just probably kidding around certain things. Right. And then but then you live for the 10%. Right. You just absolutely live. You just live for the 10% that don't get it. And those are the people you just keep on a string as long as possible. So I don't know. Yeah. I appreciate it. It's just fun. I feel like if I found a lane with Twitter where I enjoy trying to be funny like that. And as long as there's like, 50 people out there that get it, I think I'm pretty good.
How much has that intensified with that 10% lane, we'll say, with the Mikal Bridges Knicks trade? How much has it amped up on your timeline with that 10%?
It's so funny about that, because I did enter a new world of probably engaging with Knicks fans in a way that I didn't think that. And I think, my joke was, or not even a joke, my take on it was, Knicks fans are just like Nets fans, or just way more of them. Right. There's significantly more Knicks fans out there. And when you can sort of get onto their timeline, then you're in a situation where you can just interact with them more. So I don't think they're too much different than Nets fans, just in a general fandom sort of way. They're just 10x more. And so whenever you can just you can blanket the population and grab more people in the net, I think that's sort of probably what happened.
Yeah, when you simplify it in a sense, it's New York. The Nets are in New York. The Knicks are in New York. The Nets have a fan base that there's like myself from the Jersey side of things. So the passion is there. That's why it's funny. Like you see a lot of Net fan crossover, and it's like, well, you're actually both Mets fans, or you're both Yankee fans. But now you come to the basketball side of things, and it's like a disruption begins. And I would be lying if I didn't say that was for myself too, because I'm a Mets fan. The Yankees don't bother me. I'm a Giants fan. The Jets don't bother me. But I am a Nets fan, and the Knicks do bother me. And I'm out in front of it when I say when they win, it annoys me, and I can't help myself.
Yeah, I think I'm a little different from this, because I think it's probably worth just mentioning sort of how I came into Nets podcasting, if it's even relevant at all. Like, I actually came in not really, and I've said this in the podcast too, so I'm not trying to hide behind this. I really wasn't a Nets fan. I was a basketball fan for a long time. My co-host Adam was a Nets fan. I kind of thought I saw early that like the Nets were going to make some moves pre KD and Kyrie. And I was like, hey, it might be good to get into this now if we want to talk about it. And I was looking for a team that I just wanted to talk about all the time because I wanted to drill down sort of like content wise. So for me, I don't really have like this like legacy lifetime spent rooting for the Nets. And I think actually that is where the other fandoms don't really bother me that much. Right. Like, so it's just, I find it actually more funny than anything else. I had a life of being a really intense fan of something. I was a huge Red Sox fan into like the way it would like ruin my life for long periods of time. And then they won the World Series and I kind of just like got over that, like from like a therapeutic sense.
Yeah.
But I kind of left that behind, and then I started doing basketball projections and like high end sports betting stuff. And when you do that, like you really, it's hard to root for a team, right? So,
Right.
I just that's been able to. It's been a nice distancing because it's just hard for me to take it all seriously on the fandom point. And I know there's fans out there that they don't like that, but I don't know. I really can't have it any other way.
No, you got to be honest with it. And I respect it. And obviously saying the part about the Red Sox, which is interesting because I'll look at Knicks fans or Net fans. I mean, Knicks fans, you know, the population that did see them win 51 years ago. But most of them, especially those that listen to this podcast, are probably under that age group. So they haven't seen a title in their lifetimes. The Nets fans have not seen a title in their lifetimes. Do you think, like, from the Net fan, their whole perspective, the anger, the disgust, the Sean Marks, you're the problem, Joe Tsai, you're the problem. Like, if the Nets did win a title, would all of that then kind of evaporate? Like, what is it like on the other side when you win a championship from your fandom perspective? And how do you think the Net fan would even react after something like that?
My guess is it wouldn't be as exalted and just sort of over the top as you think it would be, and I think it would not like sort of cure your life problems, which I think it's probably which I think is like where some people probably put it. It would be feel really good, but I think like sort of like the ethos of sports fandom is mostly just like you're just like mostly annoyed the whole time. It's unfortunate. And like, it's what keeps us really involved with it all the time is that like, it's like just mostly like trying to root for not being annoyed. And because like, if you think about sports, right, like not to get like sort of like weirdly philosophical about it, but sports is mostly disappointment. Most seasons end bad, right? Like just about every season ends bad on like some loss level. And that is like sort of the nature of sports. So something like 95% of sports fans in any given season in a sport end their season being pissed off.
Right.
Right.
No, it's true.
And it doesn't matter if you finished last or you just finished, got to game 7 of the finals and lost on a buzzer beater. Like you just end up pissed off. So I think if the Nets fans won, it's clear to be great. Like I would be ecstatic about it. I don't think you would have like sort of the ground shifting life effect that I think some people think it would, but good luck telling any sports fans that. So yeah. I don't really. And by the way, I want them to win. That would be absolutely freaking amazing. So I doubt anyone's rooting harder for it than I am right now. But on the same time, like I just don't think it would happen. And I actually don't think that's like the fun part. The fun part is sort of the journey, not really the ending. I think mostly for sports.
Right. It's just like that big exhale when it does happen, and if it does happen. You tweeted about it and it came to fruition. Jalen Wilson, MVP of the summer league. I personally, I kind of like this, when the Nets talk about the future, and I think this changed a little bit from the summer league, but it's always Noah Clowney, everybody falls in love with, Cam Thomas, and then all these assets and picks. But I think, and I would say even from my end, I kind of like, for a year that was pretty crappy, Jalen Wilson had a nice rookie season. Your thoughts from the summer league, and then just expectations you think now for him in year 2, where he's going to clearly get a ton more minutes.
Yeah, so I think like for summer league, and Adam and I talked about this the other day. There's like 2 things we look for the most in summer league, having started watching it like really seriously, probably within the last like half decade, is that there's 2 kind of stories for me that can come out of summer league. One is if you show that you're just too good for summer league, right? Like that's a great start. Like you want a guy. Sometimes it's the first round draft picks and the guys you can clearly tell right out of the box. Like they're like, Reed Shepard's a good example this year. It's like, okay, too good for summer league. Got it. On to the NBA and let's see what can happen there. So you want to see guys that can be just too good for summer league. Doesn't mean you're going to be great in the NBA. it just means that you have a chance to be okay in the NBA because the level of competition rises up pretty high. So I think from that standpoint, it's really, really encouraging. The other story you can see from Summer League is guys that you're usually first round draft picks that you're hoping to be good and they just can't beat the guys at Summer League. That's a very concerning story.
Yeah.
Nets
Yeah.
don't really have that on their ledger right now, but that also just doesn't become like an ESPN headline either. But those are the ones where if you're those teams and you're like, hey man, we drafted this guy top 15, this guy can't beat Summer League guys, it's a real problem. That's the other story, but that's kind of the shadow ledger. Yeah, but in terms of Jalen Wilson, I mean, so encouraging, man. And another example too of why teams just brick pretty hard on not wanting to draft guys who just are a little older
Mm.
because maybe they're not going to have this supreme upside. But guys like this, player of the year guys on championship teams, like just really, really good player, their floor is so high that teams, I think, usually just kind of miss the forest for the trees. And he's a really good example of that because is he going to be like an all NBA player? No. But is he an NBA rotation player? For sure. And more teams probably should have been able to see that at the time. And he's kind of just proving it now.
Are the Nets not bad enough to tank? Because are they like, are they, I mean, with CJ, DFS, are they that bad yet?
They stink. They're so bad. They're like, I'm not worried about. I've seen this come up a couple times, and it really kind of like puzzles me a little bit. People do not realize actually how bad they are. One, talent wise, I would put them at the bottom of the league easily right now. I would put every other team easily above them. Some people want to throw the Wizards in there. The Wizards have better players. They just do, and so I don't even think that's particularly that close. Now, I'd probably take this team 5 years from now over the Wizards guys. Like, I don't think 5 years from now that talent level will be the same. But as of right now, like Kyle Kuzma would be the best guy in the Nets.
Right.
like just point stop. He would be. So I'm not worried at all about the tank. I think that Nets fans have grossly overinflated the overall talent level on this team compared to the NBA writ large. And that can happen. Like, proximity bias is a real thing. The thing you're closest to, you tend to like watch more and think it's better. That's why everyone thinks their house is worth more than like the general market ends up thinking about it. But I think that this team will have no problem. If you factor in that, I think their talent level is significantly below, especially in the guard play. If you factor in the guard play plus sort of the overall talent, plus when you're just trying to tank, you don't have to go out there and miss shots on purpose. No one's going to do that. But even if you do have guys who have requisite higher talent levels, it's just so easy to just cap them at 31 minutes and kind of call it a day and have your rotations be a little bit less. Like it's very easy to do this kind of stuff in the NBA if you're unapologetically doing it. So I've always pushed back. I mean, long answer long here, but like I've always pushed back on the idea that the Nets are too good. I think this team is flat out bad compared to the rest of the NBA.
See, this is why my dad's sending me your clips and not trusting my responses. And
why would you do you think they're too good?
I don't think they're good, but I'm like, I just worry that they're not bad enough. And I do think Cameron Johnson but I think there is something there. I mean, I think about, Cam Thomas will take a leap. I loved what I saw with Noah Clowney and their ability to switch defensively with Nick Claxton. But then, when you stop and think about it, this team was bad and couldn't beat anybody. I think I was encouraged with just how when Mikal was off the floor, maybe to me, it didn't seem like it was that much of a difference. And maybe this is me just being angry at Mikal and trying to use that as like some lame excuse to say, well, it's not that bad that he's gone. But I will concede that there is proximity bias and just me wanting not to accept that Mikal Bridges helped the Nets last year.
Yeah, they were like slightly worse with him on the court. I mean, which makes sense though, because when he was on the court, the other team's better players were on the court. So I think like can be explained a little bit by that. They also had some like sort of nice moments at the end of the year when they were in, full on everyone's tanking situations near the end. And like that was going to boost those numbers a little bit. I mean, Bridges wasn't good by any means. Well, okay, I take that back. I think it was probably a little overstated how bad he was. He was definitely bad relative to expectations, and he was miscast in his role. I don't think you lose Mikal Bridges from your team and replace him with Shake Milton and think your team is better. Like that is an incorrect calculus. Like I think that And Nets fans, again, being very close to the situation. And we went through a whole year of it where the frustration levels for basically everybody, from probably the organization to the players down to the fans to the content people, it was all, I mean, sky high. It's still like that frustration bled into a misunderstanding about Bridges, I think, that probably is a little unfair to him. So I just like don't think you can say you're a better team. It's not addition by subtraction with a guy like him compared to what they got back. That's my take on it.
Now, what do you think happened here? Because I think when he gets to the Knicks, it's like the perfect situation for him. Obviously, he's with his best friends, and that clearly works with the Knicks. Like, there's no denying it.
Yeah.
You get into that system, you went to Villanova, you're gonna play well. He fits in with everything that they need. I think he's gonna be a rock star with the Knicks. What do you think happened? Because I think those expectations last year occurred because he was so good when he came over from the trade. What do you think shifted from Mikal got here and looked like a cornerstone player to the next year where, okay, here's the keys, and it fell flat?
Yeah, that was really always so confusing. I think it's probably not one simple thing. I think there was a sort of like shiny new car aspect to it when he first came over, which is he's never gotten to do it. There was insane levels of confidence from everybody, and everyone was just sort of riding the high five train around trading KD and maybe getting like mini KD back. So I think there was like which I don't think is true, but I think the vibes were at all time highs based on like that last stretch of games, right? Then he goes the Olympic stuff, or excuse me, the FIBA stuff, where I think there's a fatigue factor for sure. The guy's played an insane amount of minutes. Even going into last year, he was like, I think going into last year, he was second to only Tatum in overall minutes when you counted the playoffs over the last like 4 years or something like that. Or it was like Tatum, then Jalen Brown, then him. He was like
Right.
way up there. If he wasn't one, he was like no lower than three. So I think like the minutes got to him. I think that also for the first time, because it didn't happen later, he got like a little bit schemed against, where they just put other teams he got their best wing defender all the time, and they saw really early, and we saw this all season, where they would just stick a big, somewhat athletic wing on him, and it was just over. It was over. Like if like Aaron Naismith was on him or Jonathan Isaac or these guys got even around him, he couldn't get around them. And so when you're seeing the other team's best defender all the time, because they don't have to help out for anybody else on this team, maybe a little Cam Thomas, but not really, I think it's really, really hard. And then I think I would say it's like probably so that at that point, it's something like a death by 1,000 paper cuts scenario where it's like probably not one thing, but everything gets X harder. When everything gets X harder for you, 10%, 20% harder, you're not going to see a game 5. But game 60, you'll probably start seeing it, right? And now it's been 15 to 20% harder every game for a whole season. And then it gets you mentally, and then you're losing, and then like there's no other great options, and the team's obviously bad, and no one really knows where they're going. And I think it was just probably like all this stuff cascading. So I don't think I want to put it to one thing, but you can definitely point to probably 10 things 5 things that happened along the way, each one of which was probably not the death stroke, but when you put them all together, it kind of starts to make sense, right? I don't know if that's a good analysis of it.
No,
but
it is.
That's how watching it every night. I never thought it was one thing, but it just all got harder. And then you fire coaches, and like just no one knows who's coming or going. And Simmons, I mean, there's so many things. I mean, there's so many things that kind of went on here that it'd be hard to maintain a level of anything. And his attitude about it wasn't the best either, which I think he admitted also.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was like a slow burn, starting with the Twitter fingers when he was clearly calling out, all 192 net fans and making sure that they heard about him there. And then I think you make a good point about seeing the best defender, which he won't see. I mean, he might. I'm not saying he's never going to see the best defender when he's on the court for the Knicks, but they have so many other options, obviously, starting with Jalen Brunson, where things will be a little bit different for Mikal, which I'll transition then into Alex's question. He did want me to get this in here, which, he just automatically seeing his text from before to ask will just like automatically put me in a bad mood, but I will respect his wishes. Will Nets fans still be happy about the Mikal trade if the Knicks are a powerhouse this year and win 55 to 60 games and are serious title contenders. Easy to be happy about the trade now and quote, not care about the Knicks being good. So your answer to that.
Well, again, like we said at the beginning, like this is sort of barking up the wrong tree with me. I do not care. I like there's 30 teams in the NBA. Someone's got to win. It doesn't matter to me if it's in the same borough, in the same zip code, or across the country. Like that to me doesn't matter. There's only so many teams to do business with. So that part doesn't really, I'm sure there's like some version of Nets fans. Like, look, I don't live in the city. I'm not from Brooklyn. So I don't want to speak for Nets fans like that are geographically sort of very rooted in this thing and have to probably talk with incessant Knicks fans every day, like at work or
Right.
you know, like you would text. Like I don't have that in my life. So I'm sure if I did have that, I probably would have a different scenario with it. I also probably would cut that person out of my life because it'd be too annoying. But the but
Yeah.
you know, so but so I'm sure there's a certain class of net fan that I'm just
Right.
never going to be able to speak for it, and it's unfair. I would encourage anyone that does feel like that gets really upset, to just try to distance yourself from it and just enjoy the team, because I think that's just a better version of life. But I'm sure there will be some people that are really annoyed by it, but I don't think that would change my view of the trade, which I think was a total home run. And
Right.
so I like that. So that's, but again, you might have just had the wrong guest for that.
No, you had the right answer. I tell Alex, I mean, I think both can be true.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like for my end, I wish they made the trade with pick any other team in the NBA, but it happened to be the Knicks. And
But is that just because it's annoying? Like, or is it because like you just hate the Knicks? Like,
it's
so
Doug, it's a very complicated,
yeah.
deep rooted, and I'll give you the mini version of it. Growing up, I'm 41. I was a Net fan starting in 1993, and just around the Knick fan. And I mean, like you said to start this show, Net and Knick fans have a lot in common, in a lot of ways, which no one will ever admit. But I do think you're right in their passion for how much they love their team. So for me, it was just being around it all the time and not
Sure.
quite getting it. I'm like, hey, we can go to net games for $10 and see the same players. You know, the Nets are going to lose, but we can see Charles Barkley, Akeem Olajuwon, all these guys. So it's deep rooted for me there. I think it actually dissipated, but to be completely transparent, having to do the show with Alex intensifies it because I can't leave it. And I got to be on top of Knicks stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
I got to watch the Knicks. I got to be on top of all these games too. So I'm immersed in it a little bit more. Because I think you make a good point, like cut it out. And for me, I think like if I was just like, hey, Alex, I lost your number, which might benefit me in the short term, would screw the podcast essentially.
Yeah, sure.
So, but it's a combination. So
Well, I
it's
do
yeah,
understand it because, like, as you were saying that, I was thinking back. I mentioned the Red Sox thing, which I don't really talk about too much because, like, whatever, it was a really long time ago. But my
yeah,
family was full. My family, dad, grandfather, everyone Red Sox fans. It was just a total torture session, obviously every single year. And then and to the point where I had the same feelings. I was like, and I was living in Jersey, could not stand to be around Yankee fans. Like when Boone hits the homer off Wakefield, like where I was working, they made an announcement just to troll me the next day. So I definitely like know that feeling. I just don't have it anymore.
right,
So, this is what I'm saying. I do
yeah.
understand it, and if you do feel that way, I can ground myself in that feeling a long time ago. I just haven't had that feeling in a long time.
Where would you and I know obviously Locked On Nets, but just following the league, where would you put the Knicks right now in the Eastern Conference? And how do you see them match up when it counts against the likes of the Celtics, the Sixers, the Bucks, and the Pacers?
I put them second behind the Celtics, and I would say I would still put them at like a pretty distant second though, because which is still, I mean, that's not a knock on them. I just think the Celtics are so good. And I think that like the Celtics, even going into the finals, we were saying, was like, man, it's kind of like underrated how great this team is. I mean, they didn't even get challenged. I know they had they they barely got challenged, and they were missing arguably their second best player, and it kind of just didn't matter, and they just ran over everybody. So I don't think it's a knock against the Sixers to say that they're worse than the Celtics. I think that Celtics was like borderline historically great,
Mm.
and again, maybe just got under talked about because the playoffs kind of ended up being sort of boring. But I would put them second behind it. My concern only is that, and maybe they solve this somehow, is that unlike the Celtics, I do wonder a little bit, sort of when the going gets tough, who else can really score after Brunson? And I'm only talking at the highest levels now.
Of
Like
course.
they'll be awesome during the regular season. They'll be a really good playoff team. But when it gets down to like the very nitty gritty, I just wonder who, like if Bridges can be the second guy. I don't know if Randall still could be on the team at that point. I just do wonder if they have like another, you just need some other guy to be able
Mm,
to score really consistently, a la like Jalen Brown and Tatum, right? Like these got Kyrie and Luca, like guys that there just has to be another dude who's a very high level scorer. And I'm just not sure they have that. But the rest of the talent is so awesome. And they obviously play their ass off in the Tibbs piece. Like he'll run Mikal 40 minutes. Like these guys
yeah.
are like they're going to be a really good regular season team, and I think they'll be a really good playoff team. I just think if I had to, it's like one slight nitpick, but I think it's a real one when it gets to the very, very end game.
Mm.
And so and I think I could just see that being a problem. And I don't know, Brunson's awesome, so maybe it won't be as big of a problem. But that's my one little nitpick. But it's only against like what I think is a historically great team.
Yeah, no, you can see. And that's the thing about the Knicks. You got Brunson, who's superstar, top, wherever you want to rank him, debate. And then a lot of guys that are very good. But is there that second star there? And I'll be curious. I think the Knicks are one of the more fascinating teams going into the season, as painful as
I
it
think the
is to
story's
say.
awesome. Like it's an awesome story. Like just signing guys just from a purely team level, like signing guys that are all friends and guys taking discounts. Even like if you're collective bargaining, it's a little different. But if you're just willing to do it, whatever.
Right.
And guys taking less so they can just try to win. And I think the story is actually kind of amazing. Again, I'm not trying to actually even give them any negatives here. It's just like, I don't know, only comparing them to the Celtics, who I just think are like just so good.
Yeah, no, I totally see it on that front. Closing it out with little Nets here. Outside of, winning the lottery, what would you consider a success for this Nets team
Like this year,
this
like going
year,
like
this
yeah, so
specific season? Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I think a couple things. I actually think this is a pretty exciting season. Well, two things. One, I just like the idea that like Nets fans, since at least we started the podcast, is the most united I've basically seen a group of Nets fans around sort
Mm,
of like no, you've never seen a group of fans more excited about a team that's about to go like 15 and 67 or something like
yeah.
that, right? So I think that's a pretty remarkable thing. We'll see if we have the same energy at, like I said, game 60, if everyone's still kind of real pumped up about it. But I think from a success standpoint, I think like Jordy Fernandez probably ended up being the perfect hire here in that he's got like sort of high level coaching already, right? Team USA, like a lot of new coaches already have sort of just front of bench experience. So I think like him bringing that attitude to a team is like will be a success from the player development standpoint. So I think like two things I would see as successes would be Cam Thomas moving away from just being able to score to be on like really high read and react, high pick and roll, and ball distribution like game in his game. I think that would be a great outcome for this season. And just like a slow path of development for like the other guys to be able to sort of see who can be real NBA rotation players later, or if like Clowney makes a huge leap. So I think it's like mostly um development related, and I just think there's like no world where they just don't have a top 5 pick. And I think the way that this draft is unfolding, that's still going to be a pretty nice win, even if it's not Cooper Flag. So I think
Mm-hmm.
there are I think there's gonna be like a lot of nice stories coming out of this season, mostly because I think a lot of these guys already understand going. If you read the quotes, they already sort of understand what's happening
Mm-hmm.
and seem like they want to just sort of take advantage of the situation, even if it means a lot of L's. So I don't know. I think it's a development kind of thing and just sort of like a see what you got kind of thing. I think it's actually
Yeah.
I think there's like a lot hard for it to really go wrong based on everyone's attitudes.
It's funny how it's all gonna just come down to one night in the lottery, and everybody's going to be waiting this whole season, and then say, "All right, you got an 18% chance," or whatever the numbers end up being based on the Nets record, and then it's like,
Yeah.
here's 8 minutes to determine possibly everything.
I will
It's
say this
crazy.
draft though, like unlike the Wembanyama thing, I would Flag's clearly the guy, right? So I don't think there's no denying it.
Mm,
He's not. This draft is kind of stacked though. And
mm,
so they did, if you were going to reset around a season and if you missed out on number one, you wouldn't be devastated. Like obviously going from Wembanyama to Scoot, right? It was like, or Brandon Miller, like those were a clear, just unbelievable drop off. but Wembanyama just don't come around. So the flag
Yeah.
thing obviously is the prize, and I hope they get him. And I think we'll be doing some talking ourselves into some other guys like Ace
Of course.
Bailey, VJ Edgecombe. Like there's other dudes, Dylan Harper. There's other guys here that could really pop also.
Are you watching them and like scouting them a little bit as you get into this season just to have an idea of what these guys are like? Will you do some of that?
Yeah, definitely this year. We haven't in the past. Like I just watched so much NBA that I actually haven't had time to watch. And I haven't really loved college basketball style for a long time. And so stylistically, I just rather watch like Grizz Hornets at the end of the season than a lot of other basketball, like college basketball stuff. This season though, like we applied for Rutgers press passes. We'll see if we get them. Like
Nice.
we're just gonna try to go to Rutgers games this year.
Smart.
I'll watch a lot more this year from just because we have so many picks and we'll just want to hit the draft so hard. It did kind of suck that the Nets had no picks this year because I do like the scouting piece at the end.
Right.
But I kind of wait till the season's over to kind of have everything come together. This season, I'll definitely just watch for sure.
Doug Norrie, Bad Weather Fans, episode 228 at Doug Norrie on Twitter. As I mentioned, we began this episode a phenomenal follow. And even if you're a Knicks fan listening to this, all three of you out there, I kid, no, check out Doug and all the great work he does online with Locked On Nets. It's a great listen. It's part of my daily routine, and it's honestly a great way just to stay up to date on the Nets. I can't tell you, Doug, how many times I've listened to your podcast while making sure my 3-year-old is safe on on the jungle gym, and like it is the pastime for me to help me in these moments. I do appreciate that.
I'll tell you, buddy, it's reciprocal because I do the same thing going the other way, and I'm a playground podcast guy too because it's just here's this trick too. There's two things. This is a little playground trick for everyone as we get out of here. This is what you do with your phone. You listen to the podcast and you hold the phone up like you're taking pictures of the kid, but then you're actually scrolling Twitter. So you hold it at an angle where it appears as if like you're just very into whatever they're doing, but you're actually just scrolling Twitter. And then you take one picture just for the receipts. And then the rest of the time you just so you look like an awesome parent, but you're actually catching up on the stuff that really matters.
Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful. And Alex, listen to that. You'll need that advice. That'll be good for you as your son continues to get older. Cause I'll be honest, Doug, I hate small talk with other parents when I'm out at the playground. And it's like,
of course,
it's
who can be bothered?
It's the same conversation. Where do you live? How old? This park, the restaurant. I mean, it's the same. I'm like, no, I need my podcast. So
and you don't want to be the guy who's just like knee deep in your phone either. So this is how you get busted both worlds. It looks like you're a very active, engaged dad because you're just getting everything, recording everything for the future. But you're actually just arguing with Knicks fans. So that's the way you got to do it.
Yeah, but go to my wife. What happened? Why did he fall? Well, Mikal Bridges was traded, and I was
taking a picture. I was taking a camera. I was taking
a
a picture out to snap a picture, and they fell right when I was doing it. It's not my fault.
Beautiful. Doug, thank you so much for coming on Bad Weather Fans. Very much appreciated.
All right, man. Take it easy.